Our first artist of the night is Kenneth Vincent Walker. Now, he's a fabulous poet in any genre, but he does have a specialty in jazz-related poetry. And some of the pieces he's going to be doing tonight are, first, all original work, and two, all inspired by the soul, the passion, and the power of blues and jazz, which he embodies like very few others. All right, Kenneth Vincent Walker.
Yes, Carla.
Now, how did you get involved in a rather specific niche of poetry? I mean, that's not necessarily what most people sit down and say, oh, I want to tell my life story, or I want to talk and write about poetry. You said the blues and jazz speak to me. Where did that come from?
Well, poets I should say, try to look for material to write.
Sure.
And
everywhere.
Right. But there's material everywhere you look, in every genre, in everything. And I try to absorb whatever I can from whatever I can. Certain things I gravitate towards more so than others, and I have a love for jazz music.
Okay.
And,
so you're a jazz fan even outside of the poetry genre.
And in fact, you'll notice a lot of my poetry is quote unquote jazz history. You'll be learning a little bit about these people as I
educate us a little bit.
Yes, I like to look at it like I write short stories, but they're shorter than short stories and they're poetic. But
Nice.
They're along that lines.
How long have you been writing for?
Gee, many, many years. You're going to make me tell how old I am.
Oh, never. I don't do that, so I don't ask
I've been
anybody
writing
else to
since
do that.
I was a teenager. And as you can look, I'm not 20 years old, so it's been some time.
What kept you with it? What keeps you inspired? Just the fact that you're able to find this inspiration everywhere you look, so it stays fresh for you?
I have a freedom in poetry. It like takes me to another land, another realm. It helps me to express myself. There's things that, everybody has that is bottled up within inside them, and just the release of it is very cathartic, I find.
So if you had to give advice to a poet who was trying to work on performing, because you are an incredible performer, you're not just a great page poet, and they're not the same skill set. So if you had someone who did have that catharsis, that incredible feeling of expression when they wrote, but then they weren't sure how to take it to the stage, what would you tell them? How do you convey on stage the emotion that you feel when you're writing?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is project, be louder than you think, because what you hear in your head
That is so true.
is very low. You need to kick it up a couple notches, and then you'll be in a good place. Another thing is, I think you need confidence, and it's hard for a young artist because when you're first starting out, you don't have very much confidence until you get out there and do it. But confidence is a thing. I think you need to believe in what you do, no matter what anybody else thinks. I mean, if nobody likes what I do, it doesn't matter, because I'm really not trying to please you. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm pleasing myself, and you can come along for the ride, or you can not.
You can come along for the ride, or you cannot. That is my next Facebook status right there. So who are some of your favorites that you do listen to get inspired?
As far as what you're talking about?
Both music and other poets. You said you get inspired by the jazz and that you love it and do give lessons in it, in fact, that it inspired you to create these pieces. Who are some of the artists that you love to listen to that you just feel?
My musical taste is very broad. I mean, it's anywhere from Billie Holiday to the Talking Heads, or
unexpected.
I mean, it's a wide range. But I do like the older jazz. I like Billie Holiday, Miles Davis, Charlie Parker, the older stuff. Although, some of the newer stuff I like too. So
some of those new whippersnappers know what they're doing.
Right. As far as in poetry, I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a contemporary poet, but A.E. Stallings. She is a rhyming poet, and there's not many of us out there because They've been trying to push us in a corner and say that it's passe, we don't do that anymore. We've moved beyond that. It's old school. I consider myself a new formalist, which is people don't mind being called avant-garde, but the new formalist is like calling yourself a young fogey. Well, anyway, I like A.E. Stallings, and she inspires me. And I believe for poetry to be free, I like free verse poetry also. Right. But in order for poetry to be free, truly free, you have to be free to rhyme too. Mm. And I find rhyme very compelling. Like a lot of people think it's too hard, or it's restricting you. Mm-hmm. It's not. It takes you into directions you never thought you'd go.
So does it encourage you to be more creative, to try to think of things and words that you wouldn't normally?
Yeah, I've written almost 170 poems, and they're about everything you can imagine, and it's because rhyme takes me into places I never thought I'd go.
Wow. That's incredible. Well, I can't wait to go there with you this evening.
Okay.
So, let's go and see some of the incredible poetic stylings of Mr. Kenneth Vincent Walker.
In the illustrious and turbulent history of jazz, there are many superlative iconic heroes with more than its fair share of tragic ones as well. Tonight, as I do my jazz set, I like to cover the likes of Billie Holiday, Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Miles Davis, Tal Farlow, Jaco Pastorius, and a brief interlude by the great tenor saxophonist Lester Young. Man, we have almost a whole band here. All we need is a drummer, to quote Sly Stone. An interesting story. Miles Davis, later in his career, patterned his look, the glasses, flashy outfits, to none other than Sly Stone. So, my first piece is entitled Lady Day. Sweet Lady Day, behind a haunting trumpet, soft mute, is crooning away through a bitter, strange fruit. A delicate flower placed in her hair, and a soul-sultry stare. So much pain and despair permeates the smoke-soaked night air. Oh, Lady Day, you sure had a way of lighting up the night when you kept your demons at bay. You eclipsed the moon this sweltering night in mid-June with your blues rendered tune, cut short way too soon. Fabulous Lady Day, you outshined the sun and were aptly given your name by the great Lester Young. Digging on Bird and Burks, the dimly lit room smelled of cigarette drink and perfume, veiled in a cloud of thick, smoky azure. Or should I say jazz, infused with the blues, amid pockets of conversation and chatter. One patron dressed in fine attire expressed, and queried the barkeep, "Hey, what's the delay?" The barkeep replied, right after he sighed. Dizzy said, "Bird's on his way." After a while, the crowd was losing its smile, and the band said, "We can wait no longer." So they started to play, and people started to sway, and suddenly the sound became ever stronger. A mountain of sound came from around the rear of the room, both rapid fire and amazingly clear. A searing display to note, which made my heart gloat, for my ears immersed in what they would hear. Then in strolls Yardbird, blowing like no one ever heard, the likes of which come but once in 1,000 years. Oh, what a sound! On my feet on the ground, it was enough to bring me to tears. When the two hit their stride, we all nearly died, for their bebop was legendary and loosely tight. And for all you young Turks, Bird would call Dizzy Burks. And man, how them cats played through the night. And then there was Miles. Miles ahead and miles beyond. Your trumpet was your magic wand. The birth of cool deemed you its father. You took the sound out even farther. All hunched in shades, horn muted face down. In your flatted fifths we get whiffs as blue note sounds abound. Playing someday my prince will come, eyes piercing through the guile like rays of sun. The dark prince of prejudice, who stands alone, performing all the while in stone. This enigmatic genius of a man was met by both cheers and tepid smiles. The embodiment personified of both sensitivity and rage, all entwined, so sublime and so named Miles. The day that you left us, my broken heart cried, just like the day my father died. You see, he loved you, Miles, and so do I. So fly away into the coolness of the cool blue, ageless sky. This next piece is a true account of my meeting of Tal Farlow, the great jazz guitar player. It's called Jazz Octopus. When I met you, Tal, life had already beat you down to a mere shell of your former self. Your lightning hands and brilliant mind, but a pittance and vapor of retreating wealth. You left the scene for so long, somewhere I read to go and paint. When I found out you were painting signs, my heart grew pale and limp and faint. A friend and I went to hear you perform. We had this bootleg of yours well worthy of popping a cork. When we queried you between sets as to its title, you simply responded, Autumn in New York. A jazz guitarist extraordinaire, Octopus your given nickname. For your fingers outstretched like tentacles in legendary rise to hidden fame, which came and went unheralded into the jazz martyrs' dance hall. What a shame. This next piece, my final piece, is called The Passing of Jocko. And I do not mean Michael Jackson, but I am referring to the great bassist of Weather Report fame, Jaco Pastorius, a true genius and innovator. He's the only electric bassist to be inducted into the Jazz Hall of Fame. Jaco had a sound on his bass, on his fretted bass, that is known worldwide as the Jaco growl. And on a fretless bass, he used round wound strings for their tone and resonance, but they would chew up the neck. So being the innovator he was, he got some industrial paint shellac used on chips to protect the neck. Like I said, Jaco was a true genius, but he had his flaws. He was clinically bipolar, which back in his day was manic depression. One fateful night in Florida, during one of his manic states, he was denied entry into a nightclub, and he broke the glass door. And a bouncer took upon himself to take this genius of a man and beat him into a coma, where he later died. This is my account of that evening. It's called The Passing of Jocko. Round, wound, fretless, unbound, harmonic undertones, spaceless, timeless moans, growls and groans, cement and stones, blood and bones, shattered glass, checkered past, happened all so very fast. Life, lost breath, succumb to wounds and death as we hang our heads in woe. On this night, this awful, tragic night, which concedes the passing of Jocko. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Our next artist up is not just one of my absolute favorite poets and performers of all time. She's also someone I'm lucky enough to get to call a really good friend. So I'm super excited to share her with you so that you can love her as much as I do. The multi-talented, the singer, poet extraordinaire, Maria James-Chow. Maria,
hey.
I'm so excited that you are here.
Me too.
Okay, so if you have to pick, what's your first love, poetry or music?
I think I fell in love with music first, but as I grew, it became poetry. Maybe, actually, the two go hand in hand, really. So it's kind of hard to pick a favorite.
So now, do you do a lot of music inspired, and I'm cheating here because I know that you do, a lot of music inspired poetry, but are you actually listening to the music when you're writing? Because you can just hear it in your words. Or does it come out just naturally?
Well, the easiest time for me to write is when I'm listening to something. I feel really inspired when I hear a little jazz or something in the background. It really flows then. Maybe that's why I love to write in coffee shops, because there's always a little music going.
So cliche. I'm writing in the coffee shop, listening to the music, creating poetry. Come on now.
But that's my thing.
Nice. And how long have you been doing this?
I have been writing since, in fact, I was forming poems in my mind before I knew how to write words on paper.
Wow.
And that was an influence of a parent. My dad was writing and reciting his work and gathering people around him to hear his work. And I'm just like, what is he doing?
Hey, your dad is quite an accomplished poet.
He is.
Was that, and I say this because my mom was a poet too, and for years that made me not want to write.
Oh.
I was like, I can't do it like that. So how was it having a parent that was doing the same things that you were doing?
It's funny because maybe this is just the way the adult child's mind works.
Right.
My Facebook status a couple weeks ago was, wow, it just hit me. My dad and I have all the same gifts. You should have seen all the responses, like, duh. But I don't think it quite clicked with me. And it was always a struggle of, this isn't yours, this is mine. This is it,
right.
And, but now I appreciate that it's something that we share.
So do you guys ever write anything together, or do you call each other and share your work with each other when you write something new?
Sometimes. And one thing, when he was ill a couple of years ago, one way that we knew he was coming back and getting better in the hospital, he wrote a poem and said, okay, he's back.
He's back. That's back. Now you actually have a brand new baby getting ready to come out, a brand new book, which I think you might have a copy of to show the camera.
I do. Ooh. This is it. This is the proof, and so the rest are coming if anyone wants the print version. This is Talking White, and it is
that's a rather provocative title.
Yes,
you want to tell us where that came from?
Well, the underlying theme, although I write on many different subjects, the underlying theme are those intracultural issues within the Black community that pit us against each other. The way we will say, this one's Black, but this one's not Black enough. Because of the way someone speaks, because of the music they listen to. Maybe they're maybe they're multiracial or something, they're just not Black enough for whatever reason. And that's the kind of accusation that really shoots us more, the one saying it rather than the one we're giving it to. Because what does it mean to be acting Black, acting white? And if you're putting a negative connotation on Blackness, what are you saying about yourself? So a lot of the poems have to do with that type of thing. And that's why it has this title, Talking White, because that's just a ridiculous accusation that someone could say. And
okay, so now if you're not African American, can you still understand the book? Is there still something in it for you?
Definitely, because I have poems that are tributes to other authors that they have read, such as Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston. I have poems about love, which everyone experiences at some point.
So it's sort of a cross between an educational viewpoint into your world, but in a way that shows that we really do all have common experiences.
Definitely, yes.
Oh, that's incredible. So now, how do you work the singing and the poetry and the performing all together? Because you are one heck of a performer. You're not just a page poet.
Thank you. I find songs that connect with the poem somehow. Something about that song reminds me of the message that's in the poem. For instance, I have a poem about waiting in line for a ticket to go see Barack Obama speak. The song I always open up with is A Change Gonna Come, because that song really spoke to that moment. What we were waiting for, fighting for, voting for was change. And he was coming to Harrisburg, and just this intensity and excitement of this diverse group of people waiting to see him speak.
That is amazing.
So just start with that song and flow right into the poem. It just flows together.
So if you had to describe your style of poetry or how you write and come up with ideas, how would you describe yourself to someone who hadn't read your poetry before or hadn't heard you perform?
I believe that I can craft well-written lyric poetry, narrative poetry that has a dramatic spoken word feel to it. So at the same time, I'm bridging a gap.
So if spoken word and traditional poetry had a baby, it would be you. Mm-hmm. Now I know you are just obnoxiously educated and even work in academia. Did that influence your work at all?
Actually, it did, because many of the poems I wrote while I was in graduate school and got some of those red marks on and things like, okay, that's too prosaic, change that.
Now, did all that academic training in writing ever sort of take you out of it? Because we have a lot of even musicians who are absolutely not trained. They play and write on feeling. We have poets that write only on feeling and say that they could not do it differently any other way. They don't want the training or to be told this is where you put this and this is the vocabulary that you use. But then we have other people that are, say you need those tools.
Well,
you need that.
I think that the most important thing that I learned was to take these powerful words that I was known for before. In when I was just doing spoken word and poetry slams, I was known for powerful words, but saying it in a more vivid way, painting a picture. I learned imagery. I learned to show, not tell. And I think
classic
that
poetry advice.
Exactly. I think that just enhanced it.
Well, let's go see some of those fabulous, powerful images. So, ladies and gentlemen, Maria James-Chow.
Black is the color of my true love's hair. his face, so soft and wondrous fair, the purest eyes, and the strongest hands. I love the ground on where he stands. Black is the color of my true love's hair. His face, eyes golden in the sun, deep purple when mixed with moonlight. Skin obsidian in its cool smoothness, ebony shaped by bones like soapstone chiseled by the most meticulous of artisans. Hair, divinely counted, every one black, curved by God's hand. Diamond smile, a blinding light, perfect as an angel's view of morning. I love my lover, and well you know, I love the ground on where he goes, and soon I know that the dawn will come when he and I will be as one. Black is the color of my true love's hair. Color struck, there's power in this. I paint hieroglyphics in oil, turquoise and gold winged Osiris, Isis, loving her Osiris, ready to build nations on the curve of his back. My hands follow the pleasure in his voice, knead his skin like dark clay. We are caramel to chocolate, lavender to purple, morning to midnight. My hand, the color of sunrise over a dark ocean. My fingers, the stars, cross the moonlit night between his shoulder blades. A goddess, his joy in my palm. Black is the color of my true love's hair. All right, thank you. We're so glad to be out here enjoying poets singing the blues. And so we're going to start with Big Mama Blue. Big mama, big mama, big mama swings that sax, makes it sing that sax. Big mama makes that sax tell her story. That sax sings the blues for Big Mama. Miss Ann got her trapped in a box marked Mammy, where she is baby's milk, morning breakfast, clean floors. But if Miss Ann could hear the wave emerging from the mouth of that horn, she'd know she was being sassed. She'd know she was being kicked by Big Mama's big black boot. Tap, tap, tapping to the beat of her silken sound of her horn's tearful moan. Big Mama kisses her sax, gentle as a lover, breathes in the Virginia air, then blows all the pain in her full belly through its mouth. Hard enough to make it, breathe to make its piercing wail hit hard enough to straighten the coils of her hair and make them dance like the ancestors. Big Mama plays, the air turns blue. Flowers bow their heads in respect, and the muse offers a rope of hip moving melody to carry her out of the box and on toward freedom. And lastly, the Post-Black Manifesto. Post-Black is the new black. Obsidian and centered, it's spit from full lips, slips from pen tips. It'll live in your mouth tomorrow. Forget Webster, red-backed and gorged with lies. Post-Black spreads too wide. Tory didn't start this, not Ellis, not Womack. It lives in your hood, but it's global. As American as apple pie and slave shacks. Post-Black art moves freely without being house slaved by field slaves, without being strung up by the Willie lynched. An international word, just a word, and the word, a movement. Simplerful, so don't dread it, don't get locked in. Post-Black psychology reacts to hood rats with paroxysm. Post-Black lit, post-Black bourgeoisie, and y'all. The poetry heads, the Afro-futurists, Black leaders arguing about butt dancing for Clinton. Post-Black in response to a war without end. Post-Black revolution, friends and also poets, ballers, drum makers, mega church minions. Post-Black hates hot combs and plays out in the sun too long. Post-Black is Harlem, Atlanta, Charlotte. Post-Black poets talk white? That's what they told them. They write nature, love beaches, and can even win gold with pigeon peas in the kitchen. Post-Blacks have been called bourgeois, Oreo, high yellow, and new, inspiring eye rolls, and this is from haters and wish I could say post-Black, like Dada, become famous, achieve eternal bliss, with head nod and dap, with a quick terrorist fist bump, say it till you lose it. Say it till you black out. Get rid of everything that smacks of essentialism. Say post-Black. Because post-Black is the world's soul. Post-Black is the point. Post-Black is the world's best African black soap. Post-Black President Obama. Post-Black Dr. Cosby. Post-Black Miss Winfrey. Boundless, limitless, self-defined, climbing like new Negroes on mountains of art. Souls have grown deep, rooted in, and unrestricted by Blackness.
I'm here with one of our very first artists who'll be performing tonight, Jack Veasey, who's an incredibly accomplished poet who comes from the Harrisburg area, and who's also a wonderful singer as well. And he'll be joining us tonight on stage. But before that, let's find out what Jack has been up to.
Hello.
Hello, Jack Veasey. Okay, so you have this absolutely incredible singing voice. And I know that you also perform with the Gay Men's Chorus in Harrisburg.
Right.
So if you had to pick, which one is your first love, poetry or music?
Well, I kind of think they're the same thing, actually, because even when you just read poetry, you are also singing. It's more like singing than it is like acting, because what you have to do is bring out the music in it. And of course there should be music in it to begin with, or it wouldn't be poetry.
True.
But I think a poet is also a singer, whether he or she knows it or not.
Okay, so for all the people in Harrisburg who do not know everything about you, and the fans in York, of course, give me the Jack Veasey story, because I happen to know some of the incredible projects that you've been involved in, but not everybody else does.
Well, I come from Philadelphia. I was born in a waterfront factory neighborhood named Fishtown, and my grandmother was a frustrated vaudeville singer, and I should walk around the house all day singing, songs like "After You've Gone" and "Who's Sorry Now."
Oh, classics.
Rip
Your Heart Out ballad.
Yeah, and so I got the music bug from her, and started publishing my poems and doing readings right out of high school back in 1973, and I've been at it ever since. And I've been involved in poetry scenes in Philadelphia, New York, Boston, and now in the Harrisburg area.
And you have a brand new book that is getting ready to come out.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
It's on the verge of coming out.
It's on the verge. It's right there. It's right there.
The only thing we have to do is the back cover. Everything else is ready to go to press.
And so tell us about that book.
It will be out in May, and it's called Shapely Selected Formal Poems, and it's poems from 1983 until now, and it's all poems that are written in forms. So it's a lot of poetry that's very musical. Most of it is poetry that rhymes.
Which is very unusual. I mean, free verse really tends to dominate the poetry scene now. You don't see a lot of people that are still writing using rhyme, that are still writing using classical forms. What is it that drew you about these much more regimented and strict forms of writing? And did you ever find it difficult to try to force your ideas into that structure?
No, I find that they pull things out of me, and I'll try to write something in a form and it distracts. I think that all the real meat of what you say in poetry and the real music of it too comes out of your unconscious, the same place that dreams come out of. And so when your conscious mind is distracted by worrying about, well, let's see, I have to rhyme this line with this line here, and then I have to rhyme that line with that line, the stuff that you really have to say can pop out without you even thinking about it. And it's the oddest thing. Generally when I write in forms, I'll write something down and I'll think, oh my God, I think that. But I never realized it before. And it's like it distracts your consciousness to get it out of the way, I find.
That's true. I've actually found when writing in form, if it's too hard for me to write about, if I'm having difficulty, it's something very personal, if I'm focused on the form, it takes me away from the situation's emotions enough that I'm actually able to write about it and get it out. When I was just sort of spewing, I couldn't. That structure gave me a freedom.
I find that too. When your emotions are out of control, forms give you the illusion of control, and then you can let go of the control and say what you have to say. It's kind of ironic, but that's the way it works.
Nice. Very nice. And so when you perform, what drew you to sort of the blues and jazz inspired poetry and performance that you're going to be doing tonight?
Well, my whole life I've been drawn toward blues and jazz. I'm from Philadelphia, and
classic history.
There's a sugar refinery right behind the house where I live, where John Coltrane had a job throwing sacks of sugar around, and we had a diner behind our house that my grandfather owned called Marie's Diner on Delaware Avenue, and John Coltrane came in. I mean, you know,
you're only 2 degrees away from John Coltrane.
Yeah, he was one. But I mean, he was one of our customers, and Philadelphia is just an incredible town for music, and I just grew up particularly with soul music because of the sound of Philadelphia International Records. Patti LaBelle is from Philadelphia, and I've seen her several times. I've met her a couple of times too. But I just grew up in a very musical city, and I had music in my family. You know, my grandmother sang, and actually her whole thing was she would have liked to have been on vaudeville when she was younger, but vaudeville is very strongly influenced by blues and by ragtime music and by other African-American music. So I had that even through my grandmother. My grandmother's singing often was kind of bluesy.
So now you have the influence of formal work. You've done influence with, I mean, you've read and recited and performed original sonnets.
Oh, yeah.
You actually told me you learned to think in sonnet form, which is incredible to me. Most people can't even break down a sonnet. You also had a really amazing project working with Walt Whitman's work.
Right.
So now tell me about that one, because that's one of my favorite poets, but that's another sort of inspiration that you pulled from a totally different outside world, but then it really directed your work as well.
Well, I grew up right across the river from Camden.
So you were just lucky in where you grew up.
I was lucky in where I grew up, actually. I mean, Walt Whitman lived in Camden most of his life. He had a house on Mickle Street in Camden, which I've been to many times. And I know about Whitman because he's so prominent. I mean, there's a bridge in Philadelphia called the Walt Whitman Bridge, and Whitman is about as prominent as Ben Franklin in Philadelphia. But also then when I came out, I discovered that Whitman was gay. And it meant a great deal to me that this legendary figure in poetry, who I'd known about since childhood, was a gay man.
So he was very much a role model to you.
Yeah. And the stuff that I've been working with in connection with him lately is I've done a lot of research about his relationship with Pete Doyle, who was a streetcar conductor and was his companion for many, many years. And also during the Civil War, when he worked with wounded soldiers. And there was a lot of a gay subtext to those situations too. And there's a thing in Philadelphia called the Gay History Project. And because I'm such a Whitman fan, and they knew that, they asked me if I would research those aspects of his relationship with Pete and his involvement with the Civil War. Pete also witnessed Lincoln's assassination. Wow. Whitman's lover Pete Doyle was present at the theater the night.
Factoid that I never knew.
Yeah.
So is that how you? Because you have written how many books now?
Well, this will be the 11th one, the one that's about to come out.
You are hugely published and anthologized. Has being able to connect with these outside sources, is that what's helped you keep your writing fresh and kept providing you new material?
Well, that and all the curveballs life has thrown me. I mean, I always have some new crisis that I'm going through that's altering the way I look at things. You know, I mean, I'm always learning.
Through it.
I have to. You know, I have to. It's how I process everything that happens to me. You know, it's how I make sense out of life.
Well, let's go here and see some of that incredible emotion, power, and considerable talent take the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, Jack Veasey.
It's interesting that the whole evening started with a tribute to Billie Holiday, because that's how I plan to start my part of it too. Billie is, as far as I'm concerned, the greatest singer who ever lived. And this is about the end of her life, and she performed almost right up to the very end. And it was what she did with the Ray Ellis Orchestra, who were a big band with lots of strings and horns, and she was just on her last legs. I mean, her voice was just a complete mess. And she would sing these songs, and they're just these really devastating songs like You've Changed and You Don't Know What Love Is. And she would sing them and just sound so tired and so haunted and so burnt out. Nobody could have sung the songs the way she did. I mean, in a way, I guess a voice teacher would have been horrified or something, but I mean, it was really, really affecting. And this is about her at that point in her life. Am I coming through now? Okay. It's called After Dusk for Lady Day. When the voice had been stripped to its husk, when the words had turned bitter, when the body on the bandstand turned its back on girlish gawk, when the sound of snapping fingers sounded too like breaking bones, the raw tones floating from her lips, the rhythm with her, and the slurring heat of hoarse came gushing to her slurred head, and beyond the crowd the faces of police defied her, daring her to move them. She, with head cocked to the left, just let the song say all the things they said, the things she saw, the truth she knew she couldn't live for much longer. And she closed her eyes a moment, smelled the marvelous gardenia propped behind her expert ear, more potent than the smoke, thick in the room. And as she trembled on the precipice, her hands described precisely the vibrato, wavering like waking eyelids. What she woke to when she turned her back on all of it, we'll mostly never know. But now, for us, gardenias gleam with deeper meaning, and the raw throat rasp of any sickness sings. Thank you. I usually follow that with a little a cappella song that's called Me, I Sing the Blues. And I didn't want to launch into it with Parker playing because we probably would be in the same key. But let me just do that just because it doesn't feel right if I don't do it. Some people sing just for the joy of singing, while other people sing to ease their pain. Other people sing because, like seeing, breathing, feeling, singing's just a thing you do again and again. But me, I sing the blues, no matter what the daily news. I sing them when I'm wearing just for home clothes, even in new shoes, no matter how they shine. I sing the blues because the blues are really mine. Because the blues are all that's real. I sing the blues because it's just the way I feel. I sing the blues because it's just the way I feel. The book that I have about to come out is poems that are all fairly musical. It's a book of formal poems. It's called Shapely, Selected Formal Poems. It has lots of sonnets and ballads and other things in it. And this has a lot of overt rhyme and a lot of music in it, and it's about a period of time when the music was really a prominent thing. It's called Jaded, a salute to the 70s. And people of a certain age will recognize lots of things in it. Sewers full of alligators, smarmy TV commentators, so much now there is no later. Look, a guy dressed like Darth Vader. So what? An impersonator. Nothing will exhilarate her. Bored, bored, bored with both the devil and the Lord. Drop the dildo, sheath the sword. She's left nothing unexplored, not even fame. Remember, what's his name? No, of course, you don't believe her. Which night was that with the fever? Dancing in a suit all white. Powder kept us up all night. Hypertension killed us all. Cut the whining. Have a ball. Let's eat some instant food. Let's snort an instant mood. Let's let the babysitter watch the brood. Let's put off sorrow till clock punch tomorrow. Dance me down my drunken corridor into that shadow. Give me more, more, more. More, more, more. How do you like it? How do you... Anyway. This is called Red Eye. And it's about a train. I don't know if you like to do train, like different train effects. It's about a ride on a train. And it's, an all-night train, which is why it's called Red Eye. It's the Red Eye train. And I guess that's really all I have to say about it. It's in, if you're at all interested in poetry forms, it's in what are called Burns stanzas, which is a type of stanza that was made up by the nuclear power magnate Montgomery Burns from Springfield for his poems for Smithers. Actually, it's Robert Burns, the Scots poet. Anyway, am I losing Parker here?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Start.
Red Eye. I guess I am a passenger, and life a train, a hurtling blur from which I see what pots cold strangers sit and stir that won't fill me. I eat a plastic sandwich on the car that's there, then past and gone. The cellophane, a softer pain peeled back at dawn, meat dry and plain. The land seen through a window, flat but steep, if it is where you're at. Reminds me of a neighborhood I fled when that place held no love. We locate hope wherever warm appears to supersede the storm that scares us cold. Suddenly, hope changes its form, is bought and sold. But having paid the fare, I trust some sense will tell me when I must grasp what I've brought, step onto unfamiliar dust, and yet get caught. You get up, whether or not the world knows. You go on, whether or not the world knows. You go through what you go through, whether or not the world knows. You come out new, whether or not the world knows. You tell truths, whether or not the world knows. You sing your song, whether or not the world knows. You turn your pain into beauty, whether or not the world knows. And it shines, whether or not the world knows. The ones who laughed at you go on laughing hard, laughing hard. But those who never face the hurt don't see stars, they don't see stars. The world turns, whether or not the world knows. The world has changed, whether or not the world knows. The world's a little bit better, whether or not the world knows. The world grows, whether or not the world knows. The ones who laughed at you go on laughing hard, laughing hard. But those who never face the hurt don't see stars, they don't see stars. The world turns, whether or not the world knows. The world has changed, whether or not the world knows. The world's a little bit better, whether or not the world knows. The world grows, whether or not the world knows.
There's a fabulous thing that I'm about to make happen right now, and it might get me in a little trouble, but we have something of a local superstar in the audience tonight, who also does happen to be a friend of mine, but she is also a phenomenal poet and spoken word artist who has a heartbreakingly beautiful voice. And so I have decided that we're just going to wrangle her up for a brief moment to share some of the emotion and the power of this evening with you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to welcome the musical and poetic stylings of a very talented inspiration to me for many years, SoulCry.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. All right, so we'll just get it cracking. Again, my name is SoulCry, born and raised right here in York. Born at York Hospital, like so many of us. That's my claim to fame. I'm from York. Anyway, so let's go. I just wanna spend some time with you, share a rhyme or two, every now and then conversation that may enlighten. Ooh, I just wanna spend some time with you, share a rhyme or two, every now and then conversation, sensation. I am the embodiment of expressed thought, the purest manifestation of the expressive arts. Taking accountability for what I'm expressing to y'all is destiny. I'm just expressing the call. Now the key to my style is that I really have no style at all. I rip a page from my notebook, tack it to the wall and spit. Then let the words lay where they fall, engaging you long enough to keep you all enthralled, because the fire that I spit will get your mind engulfed. See, I went missing for a minute, but was always involved, and later for wordplay, I just grab a microphone and go off. I keep my nose to the grindstone, keep getting my grind on, spitting on any topic that I choose to put my mind on. It's the return of the realness. Fire burns, you can feel it, you can see it, you can hear it. No, you want it, but you fear it. You can touch it, you can taste it, mainline it, get wasted, making part-time skin poppers, full-time bass heads with a flow so addictive and so unrestricted. Thought I'd give you some attention because I know what you've been missing. Yeah, you like it? Gonna get it. You can pay me when I'm finished. Have you checking in the clinic trying to get me out your system, because I'm skilled with precision. I can spit on a dime, plus I'm filled with a vision. I'm ahead of my time, and if I keep going forward, leaving heads behind. But if heads be so inclined to seek me out, then they'll find the immutable truth right here in these rhymes, the irrefutable proof right here in these lines. I make it do what it do until I'm reaching the sky and I can jump off the roof and not die. I'm that fly. That's why they call me SoulCry. They call me SoulCry. They call me SoulCry. And for those who can't spell too well, that's SoulCry. And I just wanna spend some time with you, share a rhyme or two, every now and then conversation that may enlighten. Ooh, I just wanna spend some time with you, share a rhyme or two, every now and then conversation, sensation.
I'm just going to send you out on a tasty little note. Summertime and the living's easy. Fish are jumping and the cotton is high. Your dad is rich and your mama's good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. See, when I met you, it was dissonance. I admit it, I kept my distance, dancing in and out of tune. You were a new thing. See, I play a solo gig, pausing for moments of collaboration, but always with a moment of hesitation before I dive in and swim. See, improvisation, it's not my thing. But do you have this written down somewhere? Because this music, it keeps pouring in my ear. When you speak, it's spilling over. It goes from my ear down my cheek, like rain or come shine. And I have to admit, it's making me enjoy this thing. So, switching keys, I just got a little bit higher. So hold on, because I'm feeling this. I think I'm gonna ride this note, play with it a moment, maybe draw it out through blue skies and summertime. Thank you for joining us for our special two-part tribute to jazz and poetry on Culture in Maine. If you like what you hear, or if you'd like to hear something else and want to tell us about it, make sure to follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Culture in Maine. Follow us on Twitter at Culture in Maine, or log on to wrct.tv. Look under show profiles and you can find everything Culture in Maine there. A huge thank you again to the York Emporium for hosting us for our live concert evening of poetry and jazz, and especially to our amazing performers. Last week we featured Time Out and Rick Kearns and the Con Alma Duo, who were awesome. And then this week we had the second half of our concert, which had the fabulous Jack Veasey, the very talented Maria James-Chow, and the wondrous Kenneth Vincent Walker. Again, I hope you enjoyed everything you heard, and we will see you next week right here on the corner of Culture in Maine.